Hello and welcome to the Premier Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Tito Thidoff, the PFP, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. Please listen, subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get them. Please listen, subscribe, and rate this podcast. So we got the NFL Draft in our rearview mirror now. Happened about a week ago, and lots of interesting picks. I wanted to dive into where some of these picks are going to play in the fantasy football world this year, how they're going to perform, which ones I like the most, which ones I'm a bit concerned about. And when you're looking at these, all these different draft picks, you've got to look at the situation, not just the talent, but also look at the situation. And you can look at past drafts for examples on where you had guys go to situations that weren't good and it completely ruined their NFL career. Someone like David Carr, who was drafted by the Texans #1, and phenomenal talent, but then got sacked more than anyone's gotten sacked, and it ruined his career. He never had the confidence after that. Other guys, you can see it in the situations where they're a great talent, but they're not a good fit where they're at, and they end up struggling, and their career goes a different way. So with these guys, we'll look at their fits for their teams, and before you decide how good, what the ceiling's going to be with these individuals. We'll start with the top 3 picks of the draft, all quarterbacks. Yeah, Trevor Lawrence, which we've known about for a long time, goes #1 to Urban Meyer in Jacksonville. #2, you've got Zach Wilson from BYU going to the Jets. #3, Trey Lance out of North Dakota State heading to San Francisco. Lawrence and Wilson step into the starting roles. There should be no surprise there. And Trey Lance, the 49ers say Garoppolo is going to be their starter right now. We'll see if that still happens. If they get a good offer for Garoppolo, I'm sure they'll move him. But Lance seems to be the biggest project of the 3. Trevor Lawrence goes into a situation where he's got Urban Meyer, who is a innovative offensive mind, and he's got some pretty good weapons there. They added Travis Etienne later on in the round, so from Trevor Lawrence's backfield mate there in Clemson. So I think Lawrence, it's really hard to be a quarterback with a lot of talent and fail in the NFL now. They have so many, made it so much easier for quarterbacks to be successful in the NFL. If you look back at some of the statistics from the early 90s and go back to the 80s, when Peyton Manning was a rookie, he had 28 interceptions. Trevor Lawrence is not going to have 28 interceptions this year. It won't happen. Not that many interceptions get thrown anymore, especially by talented quarterbacks. So you don't have to worry about getting body slammed like Brett Favre would have had to worry about, or Troy Aikman back when they were playing in the 80s and early 90s. And it's so I think Lawrence is going to have a 4,000-yard season, which used to be a huge number in the NFL, 4,000 yards passing. Now it's as common as a 3,000-yard passing game used to be. 3,000-yard passing season used to be. So I think Lawrence will get 4,000 yards. I think he will throw for over 20 touchdowns. And I think he'll throw for around 15-ish, maybe interceptions, but not more than that. I think he's as far as in a dynasty league, he's certainly someone I'd look at, not maybe for a top pick. I'll get to my top pick here shortly, but Lawrence, though, is going to be, I think, the best quarterback in this class. Zach Wilson at BYU, I'm not as sold on him. The Jets do have the right leadership in place, I believe, which is where Sam Darnold, another guy I thought was very talented, still think he's very talented. He was certainly not given the best situation with the Jets, with the constant turmoil, the coaching changes, the lack of weapons there. And so Darnold was destined to fail there. I think he'll do good in Carolina. But I think Zach Wilson, although it's going to be a better situation than Darnold walked into with the Jets, I still don't know if Wilson's got enough big game experience to where he's going to be this rousing success in year 1. I think he will struggle in year 1. And I wouldn't be surprised if he, I think he'll be the starter week 1, but I don't know if he'll be the starter in week 8. They may end up sitting him down for a while, depending on how quickly he's picking things up. But I'm not sold on Zach Wilson. Trey Lance, I expect to have to sit for a while. A very raw, unfinished product with the 49ers. And with Garoppolo there, the 49ers think are going to, if they hold on to Garoppolo, if they don't get blown away by a trade offer, then I think that Garoppolo starts for at least the first half of the season. We'll see where the 49ers are at. If they're 6-2, 5-3, battling for a playoff berth, then they may keep Garoppolo in there. If they're 3-5 or 4-4, maybe you'll see a switch over to Trey Lance at that point. But I think Garoppolo is your week 1 starter. moving down the fourth pick in the draft. That's the guy that I think for Dynasty Leagues now, and I was a little bit hesitant depending on where he would go, but the fact Kyle Pitts goes to Atlanta, I think he's going to have a fantastic year. He would be my number one pick in a Dynasty League. He is of the Travis Kelce, George Kittle mold. Darren Waller's probably a closer example there, but Atlanta's a great situation for him to land in. You've got Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, two superstar wide receivers that teams have to account for. And so Kyle Pitts is going to get a lot of opportunities because the Falcons are going to throw the ball a lot. I know they had Mike Davis from Carolina. He was the guy who filled in for McCaffrey last year when he was hurt. But they're not going to lean on Mike Davis as like this bell cow back who gets 20 touches a game. So they're going to throw the ball a lot still. And Matt Ryan is still a damn good quarterback. I love Kyle Pitts. I think he is going to be have the best year among all the rookies as far as in relation to the position he plays, where he's going to rank and whatnot. But I think he's going to be a top 5 to 7 tight end, if not top 3 this year, because he will be matchup nightmare, which everyone said a bunch of times during the draft. He'll be a matchup nightmare for other teams, and he's got the right guy to get him the ball in Matt Ryan and the supporting cast around him to where teams cannot focus the attention they need to put on Kyle Pitts. They can't do that on Kyle Pitts because they've got to worry about everyone else in Atlanta. Number 5, Jamar Chase, LSU, went to Cincinnati. Wasn't sure if the Bengals would go with Penei Sewell or Chase in this pick. I think if Pitts were there, they might have considered him as well. But, when you talk about improving Cincinnati's offensive line, and they had, Burrow getting hurt last year, Burrow getting sacked as much as he did. He had to run for his life a lot, and they wanted to improve the offensive line. Well, having a weapon that Joe Burrow is familiar with, a weapon that Joe Burrow had success with at LSU, threw him 20 touchdown passes back in 2019. That also improves the offensive line because now Burrow's got a guy that gets him and that he knows he can trust on the field out there. And so Burrow might not need as much time to throw the ball now. Whereas if you're playing with inconsistent receivers and guys that aren't getting open like they should, then the offensive line certainly comes into play if it takes you long to get rid of the ball. Having Jamar Chase there is going to help the offensive line for the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's going to help Joe Burrow, and Jamar Chase, I think, will have a good year also for the Bengals. Jalen Waddle, the next pick, and he went to Miami and at number 6. And look, Waddle is another phenomenal talent. Going into Miami, he's the number one guy there. I don't care what the other guys on the roster are. He walks in as the number one guy. Also familiarity for him with Tua Tagovailoa. So I think that those are both really good, solid picks. You've got to be able to throw the ball in the NFL these days. There's a lot less pressure on running, and you do have to get rid of the ball quite a bit. You're going to throw the ball 30, 40 times a game. And so that's why you see these the first 6 picks are all either pass catchers or pass throwers. Moving down a little bit, Devonta Smith got taken by Philadelphia at number 10 overall, receiver from Alabama. And although I think he's very talented, he showed that obviously last year, but I'm not a big Jalen Hurts guy. He ended up with 6 touchdown passes, 4 interceptions, and limited duty last year. Started the last 4 games of the year, went 1-3 as a starter. I just don't know if he is the long-term answer for Philadelphia. I haven't seen him throw the ball enough there, and I want to see how he prepares or how he performs when teams have more time to prepare for him. And until he shows me that, then I'll believe in him after that if he can perform at that level, at a higher level than he did last year. I'm not a big Jalen Hurts guy, so because of that, I'm not a big Devonta Smith guy going forward until I see improvement in the Philadelphia offense, which was just an absolute train wreck last year for most of the year. Justin Fields, number 11 to Chicago. The Bears traded to get him. I think Fields is the second best quarterback in this draft behind Lawrence. And Fields, he might not start week 1. In all likelihood, Andy Dalton will start week 1 and may start the first few games of the season, depending how they're doing. It'll be much like the San Francisco situation where the Bears, who've been a playoff team 2 of the last 3 years, if things are working out okay, if they're winning games under Dalton, then I think Dalton remains a starter and they bring Fields slowly along. But if Dalton starts off and they're like 1-3, then you might see Fields right away there. I think ideally the Bears would like to ease Fields into the NFL. And I think when it's all said and done, though, I think Fields will be the second best quarterback in this draft class. He's got enough weapons around him and a strong enough defense to where there's not a lot of pressure on him there. to perform right away, and to have like a Patrick Mahomes or a Lamar Jackson type of season. He doesn't have to do any of that. All he has to do is go in and play within himself when he gets into that game. They've got enough guys there to where on the defensive side to where they're going to be in close games, and he doesn't go out there and try to win these games and bring them back down from 20 points a lot of the times. Going down a little further, I like the Chargers picker, Rashawn Slater. I think he's the best offensive lineman in this draft. I like that pick there. Now at number 15, Mac Jones for Alabama. New England re-signed Cam Newton. Cam Newton was not good last year, although he did rush for, 12 touchdowns, I believe was his number last year. So he certainly beat teams with his legs, but his throwing did not impress me at all last year. Mac Jones, there's people comparing him to Brady because he can manage a game. He's a smart guy. I'm not sold on Mac Jones. Look, Mac Jones last year, his only year really as a starter there, and in every game Alabama played, they had the best talent on the field. They were more talent than the other team on the other side of the ball. So the offensive line was always better than the other team's defensive line. The receivers were better. Alabama's running backs were better. And it's very easy to win a lot of games when you've got that going for you, when you are clearly better than the team on the other side of the ball every single week. I know the SEC's got, certainly has a lot of talented teams in there. A lot of guys got drafted in the NFL. But Alabama always had superior talent. So, and you can say the same about Justin Fields for a lot of their games too, although I don't know if against Clemson they did. Fields performed great there, but against Alabama, certainly Alabama had the better team at that week. But Mac Jones, though, is somebody there's one season on him. Justin Fields started for 2 years, which is why I like him more also. There's a little more proof as far as what he could do. So I'm not as high on Mac Jones. New England doesn't have a lot of weapons around him. The receivers are weak. I know they signed overpaid for a couple of tight ends here in the offseason, but there's still not much of a running game there. And, the fact there's no explosive receivers really to throw to. I'm not big on Mac Jones. Maybe in a couple years he'll be good, but I don't see him being that good right away. So that's through the top 15 picks. Looking down at some of the other receivers that were taken, Kadarius Toney for the Giants, I thought it was a bit of a reach there. He's a good receiver, but I thought that was a little bit high for him. I'm not sure if he will be the Giants with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones finally has all his weapons now, and you do have Kenny Golladay there, so that does help Tony's stock a little bit, the fact that he won't be a number one guy like Waddle will be going in, or like Jamar Chase. The running backs, though, really interested me. Najee Harris goes to Pittsburgh at 24, and Travis Etienne goes to the Jaguars at 25. The Harris pick I thought was coming. I did think Pittsburgh would take him, and much like I talked about how the addition of Jamar Chase improves Cincinnati's offensive line's performance, the addition of Najee Harris improves Pittsburgh's offensive line's performance. He's a fantastic running back, the best running back in this draft. He is a 3-down back, and they can give him the ball 20 times a game and not worry about it. I love this pick. I think that he will be the second best player this year in as far as rookies in fantasy football behind Kyle Pitts. But Harris walks into a great situation in Pittsburgh, where he gets an opportunity to play with Roethlisberger. I know was not great last year. I expect him to bounce back this year, though. And the Steelers as a whole, their offense, I think, will be better than it showed last year, especially in that last, 4 or 5 games they played. So Harris is a big addition to that team. And like I say, he'll be the number 2 fantasy player overall, I think, as far as I know quarterbacks score more points in a lot of these leagues based on the scoring systems. I'm just talking about as far as a rookie based on where he's going to rank within his position class. I think that Harris will have a very good year. Travis Etienne goes next. I'm surprised Jacksonville took him. They've already got Robinson there, who had a great year last year as a undrafted rookie. But Urban Meyer must see something he really likes in him. I imagine he'll use him a lot as a receiver. His familiarity with Trevor Lawrence also helps him out. So I think that those guys both ended up in pretty good situations. I know that there's more running backs to compete with at Jacksonville than Harris has at Pittsburgh, but I think he will end up being a solid pick for them as well, and especially in a PPR league, I think that Etienne's going to have a lot of value. Support for the Premier Fantasy Podcast is brought to you by Manscaped. who's the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. They obsess over their technology developments to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. Manscaped is trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. Join the movement for all your below-the-waist grooming needs. I can personally vouch for this. One of the 2 million men worldwide that are using Manscaped. It works. It is, you may have been frightened before of having something sharp in that region of your body, something that can cut, but trust me, Manscaped gets the job done, and you'll be just fine. Trust me on that one, Manscaped. And if you go to manscaped.com and enter promo code TITO, you will get 20% off, and you will get free shipping. 20% off your first order, free shipping. Go to manscaped.com, code TITO. Be right back after this break.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read one book a month, and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us, and then listen in.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Hey, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. I created this podcast to have hard conversations. Conversations that make us human but are also wildly uncomfortable. Conversations that help give voice to the voiceless and to the marginalized. Now you can listen to the entire first season on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Consider this your personal invitation to join the conversation.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Powell, co-host of the Oranges, Oranger, Browns podcast. Check us out anywhere you listen to podcasts. For all your Browns coverage, post-game, pre-game, anything you need Browns, you'll find it here on the Oranges, Oranger, Browns podcast.
And we're back with the Premier Fantasy Podcast. I wanted to start talking about a couple of moves. One move actually was made, and then one potential move. Aaron Rodgers has said he wants out of Green Bay. He has told members of his team that he doesn't want to return to Green Bay, and I guess this has been brewing for a while, to the point where the Packers were looking around at other quarterbacks potentially, but the Packers organization said they're not moving him. They have no desire to move him, and he's under contract for 2 years. So they have no desire to move on from Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers could simply retire if he wants to. I don't think he will, but he could do that. Regardless, if he holds out for any length of time, that's going to be obviously detrimental to the Packers' offense and specifically the receiving core. But I personally think Rodgers is probably done in Green Bay. I think they'll find a taker. They'll find a deal that they want to do. Because Rodgers, the fact he said he's not going to come back he's not going to consider coming back unless the GM gets fired. Didn't say he would come back. He said he would consider backing off of that if the general manager was fired, which I don't think the Packers can do, and I don't think they should anyway. But the list of Rodgers' potential destinations, it's not as great as it was pre-draft. Some teams now, like the 49ers, have hitched their wagon. Trey Lance now, with the deals they made, giving up some future assets there, would take a lot for the 49ers to take on Aaron Rodgers. And Rodgers said that the teams he would be interested in include the 49ers and the Broncos and the Raiders. I would think the Broncos and Raiders are the most realistic destinations. John Gruden, he loves Aaron Rodgers, and they would have no problem shipping, Derek Carr back over in a deal. Likewise, the Broncos, they certainly would love to have him. I think that they would be I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender with Aaron Rodgers. I guess anybody with Aaron Rodgers probably is, but I still think the Chiefs are just way too strong out there. I guess you'd call the Broncos, if they got Aaron Rodgers, yes, a Super Bowl contender. I would not put them as a likely participant, though, in the Super Bowl. It's just in the AFC. Getting by Kansas City, getting by Buffalo, and even at this point, getting by Cleveland is going to be a challenge in the AFC. So I don't think Rodgers comes back for them, which is going to demolish Devontae Adams' value in all intents and purposes. And so keep an eye on that and what happens to that as we continue to go on in the offseason. The other news that I found interesting was that the Detroit Lions decided to part ways with Kerryon Johnson. Kerryon Johnson, their running back, was a second-round pick out of Auburn, I believe, in 2018. So he's been with the team for a few years, had a decent first year, but obviously with DeAndre Swift there now, they don't have the need for Kerryon Johnson. And think about it now, DeAndre Swift, after last year you had to share carries with Kerryon Johnson, also Adrian Peterson. Now they're both gone. I know that the Lions did add Jamal Williams, but it's DeAndre Swift show there. This is huge news for DeAndre Swift owners. His value spikes up. You know, for all the talk about running backs and the fact all these shared backfields and lack of a three-down back in the NFL, how it's an extinct breed. And you got, obviously you have DeAndre Swift there in Detroit. You've got Jonathan Taylor in Indy. You see what Derrick Henry's doing. I think Najee Harris is going to be that guy also. You know, Dalvin Cook, McCaffrey, all these guys. You've got a lot of them around now. And more than I think you had a few years ago, guys you can count on to go out there and get 20 touches a game. And I think it's what you're going to see out of DeAndre Swift now. So I love the fact that the Lions have moved on from Kerryon Johnson. He did go to the Eagles, but the Eagles have got so many running backs right now. They've got Jordan Howard. They've got Boston Scott, who had a couple of flashes last year. They've also got Miles Sanders, who I think will be the starter there. But Johnson's not going to get a lot of carries, a lot of touches in there anyway, unless there's some major injury somewhere. A couple of guys get hurt and cannot play. So Kerryon Johnson goes with a second-round pick out of Auburn and had a look like a decent future potentially in Detroit. To now he is off to Philadelphia, where he's going to be, in all likelihood, competing to be the third running back, I would think, because I still like Jordan Howard better than Kerryon Johnson. It's probably Miles Sanders, Jordan Howard, and then, the third guy will either be Boston Scott or Kerryon Johnson. And now, speaking of running backs, I want to give you a peek at my top 10 running backs as of today in a PPR league. This obviously could change based on what happens with injuries and any other moves made by teams. But right now, as of today, is my May 7th. It's my top 10 running backs right now. And number one this year, I'm going with Dalvin Cook. I think that McCaffrey, he'll still have a very good year next year. I don't know if he'll have the kind of year he's had, though, before the injury. And I think Dalvin Cook is trending in the right direction. I like him more. McCaffrey second. They're both still studs. They should still be the top two running backs taken in a PPR league. I like Cook slightly better than McCaffrey this year. Alvin Kamara is my number 3 back out of New Orleans. And I think that hopefully Jameis Winston, as far as I'm concerned for fantasy, hopefully Jameis Winston wins that job. I think that gives the Saints offense the best opportunity to succeed. If Taysom Hill wins it, that will cut into Kamara's value a little bit, strictly because Taysom Hill's a threat to run the ball when you get close to the end zone. And he's not as polished a passer as Drew Brees was, not as good a passer as Jameis Winston is even. So I think that you will see some of the touchdowns that normally go to running backs could be going to Taysom Hill, but I expect and hope that Winston wins the job. So those are my top 3 right there. Number 4 is going to be based a lot on what happens with the Aaron Rodgers situation. I have Aaron Jones at number 4. But if Rodgers goes, if he goes somewhere else, and depending on what the quarterback is that comes in to replace him, I've got Aaron Jones could drop in the spot for me. I've got him 4th right now. I love Jonathan Taylor at 5. I think he's going to have a monster year for the Colts. Carson Wentz is an upgrade over Phillip Rivers, the aging Phillip Rivers last year. I think that Carson Wentz, being back with a familiar coach that he had success with back in Philadelphia, I think will be with Frank Reich, I think will be a big deal for him. And I think that Jonathan Taylor, he'll be my number 5 back. Number 6, I know he's coming off an injury. I'll take Saquon Barkley right now. Number 7, I've got Zeke Elliott. I've got Derrick Henry down at 8th. And look, I'm concerned about Derrick Henry's volume of touches over the last couple years. I'm not convinced that it won't affect him this year. I expect a bit of a drop-off from what he's done the last couple years. Outstanding running back. I just think that the carries are going to take their toll on him now. After that, I've got Zeke Elliott, and then I've got Nick Chubb in that mix, and also Joe Mixon. That's how I've got him ranked right now. as of May 7th. And for the next podcast, I'll get more in depth wherever quarterbacks and wide receivers. We'll focus more on that in the next podcast. But thank you for tuning in, and I appreciate that. You can find me on Twitter at ThitHappens, at THIT Happens. At ThitHappens is where you can find me on Twitter. And again, thank you to Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped.com, code TITO. Manscaped.com, code TITO. Get you the 20% off your first order and the free shipping. Thanks for tuning in. The Press Play Podcast Network. We got a lot of great shows. Coming up next, you're going to have the Phenomenal CBD podcast. That'll be on right after this. And thank you so much. Subscribe, listen, go to iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast fix, and subscribe and download from there. Thanks so much. Have a great day.